Hi there. Welcome back to English 112. This is for our class for Thursday, the 28th. And I wanted to keep today's class very short because I am well aware that a paper is coming up soon. So I wanted to devote this class period to writing and working on the paper. And certainly if you've got any questions or concerns about the paper, please reach out to me and I will be happy to give you some suggestions. In the interim, I wanted to talk about one short poem, and this is from the 1700s. So, you know, we've been mostly working with poetry from the 1600s. And this kind of poetry was a very popular form known as romantic poetry. It was less about romantic relationships and more about a celebration of nature and the natural world, in a way that could connect perhaps to the human world. And William Blake is one of the more famous poets in this tradition. You might have heard of Percy Shelley. He also was another romantic poet. And the poem that I selected, and you can see the link below from the Poetry Foundation, is entitled The Sick Rose. And I wanted to read that to you. The sick rose. O rose, thou art sick. The invisible worm that flies in the night, in the howling storm, has found out thy bed of crimson joy, and its dark secret love does thy life destroy. And one of the reasons why I like to give this poem at this particular point in the semester is because we've read so much literature that basically students at this point are skeptical that a piece of literature could mean what it says, that it must suggest something else. And I didn't want us to forget that the literal is quite as possible, as well as the metaphorical or the symbolic. Because you can read this poem quite literally, especially when you think about the Romantic period and how the Romantic writers would oftentimes write about elements of nature. And we could be talking about a flower, a rose, that's sick, in other words, is dying because of some parasite, in this instance, an invisible worm or some insect, that flies in the night in the howling storm. And again, think about all of the negative connotations associated with nighttime and storm and howling. Has found out thy bed, thy flower bed, of crimson joy, and crimson being red, so this is probably a red rose amongst other red roses. And its dark secret love does thy life destroy. And that ultimately, when you think about the food chain, in order to survive, higher level beings need to consume lower level beings. However, this is a poem that is very open to symbolic interpretation. And because it's so general, there are lots of different ways that we could read this poem. Rose could read in reference to a woman, much like in Rose for Emily. O Rose, thou art sick, so this woman is sick. And the invisible worm that flies in the night in the howling storm, this could perhaps be disease, has found out thy bed. And usually, bed is a place of great intimacy and also safety. It also happens to be a place where individuals tend to spend time when they are ill. Of crimson joy and the idea of blood being lost in one way or another through disease. And its dark secret love does thy life destroy, that in order for this disease to continue on, much like a virus, it basically must destroy the host. That said, another way to read this is Rose again is a woman, and thou art sick. In this reference to the worm, we could think of the worm as a phallic symbol. And perhaps it's the reputation of the woman that has been destroyed. And the invisible worm that flies in the night in the howling storm, this could be in reference to some sort of sexual activity, has found out thy bed, which again is oftentimes a place of intimacy, of crimson joy. And in fact, blood can be exchanged or lost during the loss of virginity and the breaking of hymen. And his dark secret love does thy life destroy. Again, this would be the loss of her reputation, whether it be because she lost her virginity. Think about how we talked about in Shakespeare's time, and even in this time, a woman was viewed as damaged goods if she could not retain or was unable to prove her virginity. And this could also be an illicit affair. And the idea that this woman's life has been destroyed because ultimately she's engaged in extramarital sex. Or perhaps Rose is just a suggestion for society, and that society is sick itself. through political corruption or social corruption. That's the invisible worm that flies in the night. And his dark secret love does thy life destroy. So I always use this poem as an example of, yes, you can read and interpret, but you also need to think about the literal and the possibilities of the literal. So if you were going to talk about this poem, let's say in an explication, when you are examining the elements of a poem, you would talk about both the literal as well as the symbolic and the figurative. So we are at 5.5 minutes, so I thought that I would end it here so that you could work on your paper. No attendance question today, so today is an open class. So I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well, and we will continue on next class with poetry. Take care. Bye-bye.